If you go to bed at night and wish that you would not wake up in the morning, or if when you're driving, when you're in traffic, if you pray that some kind of fatal accident would happen to you, if you just generally don't really care if you continue to exist and live, you're probably experiencing something we call passive suicidal ideation. As you can guess by the name, passive suicidal ideation is a form of suicidal thinking in which you are not going to do anything intentionally to end your own life, but you kind of wish something would happen to you. You're ready for something to put you out of your misery. You're suffering and you just want to be done. You're not excited about life. You just want life to be over with. There are a few things that I want you to know about passive suicidal ideation because it's a very common, very important, and unfortunately very misunderstood symptom. And you might be surprised that I call it a symptom. I'll get back to that in a little bit. So today I want to address 5 important pieces of information about passive SI that people usually misunderstand. I also have an important question that I'm going to ask you at the end, and your answer to that question will help you determine your next steps to figure out how to deal with these thoughts. So the first thing I want to address about passive SI is whether or not it's normal, because a lot of the comments on my initial video on this said, isn't this just life? Doesn't everybody just feel this way? Are there really people who don't feel this way? A lot of people say, like, is this normal? That was such a big question, and it's a dangerous question, honestly, because normal can mean more than one thing, right? Like, statistically, more than 50%. Normal can mean common, but sometimes we also use normal to mean, like, this is just the way things are going to be. We use normal to describe something that cannot be changed, that is just an inevitable part of human life. If you feel this way, if you, from what I've said so far, think that passive suicidal ideation is something you experience, I think asking whether or not it's normal is the wrong question. The second type of normal, not being excited about life or not necessarily feeling great about the fact that you probably have, I don't know your age, obviously, 30, 40, 50, maybe 60 more years of this, whatever this has been. Is it weird or bad that idea, that reality, the truth of that does not excite you? I don't want to come across as judgmental because it's not my place to tell you how you should feel about your life. But what I will say is this. I think it's a very dangerous thing to accept because I do not believe life has to feel that way. And I say this as someone who has experienced passive SI on and off for a large portion of my own life. So this is something I have dealt with. It's a little presumptuous, I guess, to assume that it's the same feeling for every person. I know what this feels like. I also know what it feels like to not have it. And there were reasons that I was feeling that way. That we'll get to that at the end when we get to my question for you that I want you to answer. Everyone's life kind of sucks, and there's no way that's ever not going to be true. And we should all just buckle up and just accept the fact that most of life is going to be miserable. I think that is a complete load of crap. I'm not on board with that idea, but I know that it can be like that. That's my very long-winded answer to question number 1. Is it normal? Question number 2, is it an indicator of severity? Because we also have, of course, active suicidal ideation. Now, active suicidal ideation is when a person is actually planning or maybe even taking steps toward ending their own life. Suicide or attempted suicide is a very violent act, and some people simply do not have the stomach for that type of action. It doesn't mean that their depression is not as bad. It's a line that not everybody is willing to cross, but some people just cannot make themselves engage in acts like that. It just is this threshold that they have inside of them. Another big factor is whether or not a person believes that they are a burden on others. In other words, if you feel like your existence generally makes things worse for people around you, that puts you at greater risk for being more of active suicidal ideation thinker. If you don't necessarily feel that way and you still believe that you have some value or some connection or some importance to other people, that tends to put you more in passive territory. That still can be a mixed bag because sometimes you hate your life. You don't enjoy being alive. You feel miserable, but you know that other people want you here or need you here or would be devastated if you were gone. And so sometimes the only thing that keeps us in that passive mindset is the knowledge of how our passing would impact others. And that's often where we get into those pray for death type mentalities, because you don't want to be the one who does it, because you know that would change how other people think and feel, but you just don't know how much more of this you can take. So it's very possible for people with severe depression, people who are really, really miserable and who are not enjoying being here, to still primarily experience passive suicidal ideation. So if this is you, don't think, well, my depression must not be that bad, because I rarely get into that active mindset where I'm really planning or thinking about what I would do. That doesn't mean your depression is mild or moderate. It very well could still be severe. And don't think that about other people either. Don't take it for granted. And that kind of leads into my third piece of information that I want you to know about passive SI, which is it can still be dangerous and it should be taken seriously, whether it's you or somebody else. Don't think that, well, it's passive, so like I know nothing's going to happen, at least. You don't know that. You don't know that. And you should always take any type of suicidal thinking seriously, whether it is yours or somebody else's. Because the other thing is, sometimes passive SI gets so bad that people put themselves in situations. And again, they're not intentionally doing something to end their own life, but they're not avoiding it either. Sometimes you see things like reckless driving or heavy substance use, recklessness with medications, and not to the point where it's like, I'm making an attempt on my own life. Always take seriously the thing that you think might be the way out of your suffering. Like, I know how that sounds, and I know that you can't just stay here for other people forever. Fourth thing I want you to know is that there is a difference between passive suicidal ideation and intrusive thoughts about death. An intrusive thought is an idea or an image or a concept that will pop into your mind somewhat frequently, and you're not intentionally thinking about this thing. Like, you're just going about your day, taking care of your business, and all of a sudden your brain just, boom, death, right? Or it could be anything. In this example, it's death. You're driving up high, on ramp or an off ramp or something, and you kind of look out your side window and you're like, that's a good 30 feet down there. If I slipped off this road right now, that could end very badly for me. A flash of you like driving off that cliff just pops in your mind and it freaks you out, and you're like, oh my gosh, and you grip the wheel tighter and you pay really close attention to what you're doing. That's an intrusive thoughts that we experience, are things that we explicitly do not want to happen. They're things that disturb us or freak us out, and they're things that we're trying to stay away from. And our brains kind of latch onto that and they remind us, hey, this could happen. So like, be really careful. Whereas with passive suicidal ideation, there is desire behind it. There is some level of a wish or a desire to have it happen. So if you have thoughts or images of your own death and they terrify you and they disturb you, that's not passive SI. That's an intrusive thought about death. The last thing that I want you to know about passive SI, and this will lead into the question that I've been teasing this whole time, is that in most cases it is treatable. They are typically treated by either therapy, psychiatric medication, or a combination of the two. So if you are experiencing some of what I've described today, and you are not currently seeking treatment or receiving treatment for a mood disorder, I would highly, highly recommend that today be the day you start to figure out what you want to do. Start the process of finding help now, because this is miserable. And I don't want you to have to live this way any longer than is necessary. It's probably already been going on for too long. I do not want you to have to deal with this alone anymore. And there are people out there who want to help. Here's my question to you. When we experience depression, there's this feeling of an absence inside of you. If you did get some good value out of this, all I ask is that you show me some support in some way or another. You can do that by subscribing. You can do it by leaving a review. You can do this by sharing it.